of July is somehow next week. I literally have no idea how that happened, but it is time for me to share with you guys all the books that I read in June. Honestly, June was a big Kindle reading month for me. I read all 8 books on my Kindle. I've been obsessed with reading on my Kindle, mostly because I read mainly at night now since my son is down to only 1 nap a day, and a lot of the times I'm chasing him around or we're outside playing, so I don't really have time to sit down and read during the day. So at night, just reading on my Kindle is better and easier on my eyes. I honestly never thought I would use my Kindle as much as I'm using it now, so I'm really happy that I bought this Kindle in April because I've been getting a lot of use from it. I've also been reading a lot through the Libby app. I already talked about the Libby app on another video that I uploaded. I think the last one I uploaded where I talked about my summer TBR. I told you guys a little bit about Libby if you're unfamiliar with it, but in case you haven't watched that video and you want to know what Libby is, it's basically an app where you can check out ebooks using your library card. There's a ton of books that you can read through the Libby app, and it has saved me so much money. So if you like to read and you don't want to spend a lot of money on books, or you can't spend a lot of money on books, definitely check out the Libby app. There's also another app called Hoopla that is basically the same thing, and they have a different selection of books on that one as well. I think it's called Hoopla. That just sounds like such a weird name to me, but definitely go check out those apps because, like I said, they have saved me a ton of money, and you can read the books that you borrow on Libby and Hoopla. I think Hoopla allows you to do that too. I'm not 100% sure because I haven't really used Hoopla that much, but I know that the books that you borrow on Libby, 99.9% of the time you can read them on your Kindle. With that being said, let's talk about the books that I read in June. I only read 8 books. It definitely was a quality over quantity month for me because I actually enjoyed, I want to say, all the books that I read this month. I don't have any books that are less than 3 stars, and honestly I count that as a win. The most recent book that I read was Betting on You by Lynn Painter. I'm going to start off this video with this book because I loved it so much. It was so close to being a 5-star read for me. It's basically a YA romance. It follows 2 main characters who actually meet for the very first time on a plane. They don't have the cutest meet cute. They actually find one another quite annoying. They walk away from this first meeting kind of annoyed with each other and happy that they never have to see each other ever again. But then I think they see each other 1 year later, and then again 3 years later when they're both seniors in high school, and they end up working in the same place. Bailey and Charlie actually make a bet with one another regarding 2 co-workers hooking up, and through different situations that emerge, Bailey and Charlie actually end up fake dating, and it's a really cute YA romance. I love Lynn Painter's YA romances. I'm not a huge fan of her adult romance books. They just fall flat for me, but her young adult ones like The Do-Over, and what was the other one that I read from her? I read The Do-Over, and there was another book by her that I really enjoyed. I'm looking at my bookshelves right now, but I don't see it. And then there was another one that I love. I'll have it on the screen if I can remember the name. But this one, Betting on You, gives me the Do-Over vibes just based on the writing. It's super cute. The characters are witty, they're strong, funny. The banter between them is a 10 out of 10. And even though they're young characters, you can't help but just smile throughout the entire time reading this, and just young love is so beautiful, and the writing just makes you feel like you're right there with the characters and you're part of their friend group and you're rooting for them. The only thing I didn't enjoy, which is why I only gave it a 4.5, was that I was hoping that we would get a little bit more of a backstory on the main character's Charlie's background. Lynn Painter alluded to him having a lot of family issues, but she never really went in depth regarding his issues, and I really wanted to learn more about his character and why he viewed the world the way that he did. And I was kind of waiting until the very last page of the book for him to tell Bailey why he was the way that he was. Again, it was vaguely talked about, but it wasn't out there in the open, and I wish we had gotten to see a little bit about Charlie and his personal life and his family life, because you do get his POV in this book, which reminds me, this book is dual POV, which that already is a huge like A+ in my book, because I love when romance authors write books in dual POV. But yeah, we really didn't get to know Charlie a lot, at least as much as we got to know Bailey's. Had we gotten to see more of Charlie's personal and family life, then I would have easily given this book 5 stars. I read on Libby, and I'm actually ordering on Amazon so I can have the physical copy. I want to read it again so I can annotate it because there's so many good quotes. Again, the banter between Charlie and Bailey is just 10 out of 10. The romance is just so adorable and so cute. Oh, one more thing I didn't really love was Bailey's immaturity, but she herself knew she was being immature. So that kind of saved her character for me. Like, she would call herself out and be like, I'm being so unreasonable right now, but kind of understand her because what she's going through in the book is not easy. So you kind of give her a pass. If you enjoyed The Do-Over by Lynn Painter, definitely pick up Betting on You because it's such a cute little rom-com. And if you love rom-com movies or rom-com books, then you have to read Betting on You. So freaking cute. The next book that I read was Home is Where the Bodies Are by Geneva Rose. I think I read this on Libby as well. I ended up giving this book a 3.75. It's a book following 3 siblings, all in their late 30s, early 40s. They have been estranged for the last several years, I think 7 years in total. Their mom recently passed away and their father has disappeared. He's been missing for 7 years, literally since they have last seen each other. And because their mom has recently passed away, they all end up meeting at their childhood home and try to figure out what to do with the house. Should they sell it? Should they keep it? What to do with all of their mom's belongings, things like that. And upon going through the house and cleaning, they find a VHS tape in the closet. And on that VHS tape, they see a clip of their mom and their father standing over a young girl's dead body. So throughout the book, they're trying to figure out if their parents are killers and if they killed that young girl or if there's more to the story. No one's been able to figure out whatever happened to this 13-year-old. I think she was 13. It's a really fast-paced thriller. I loved it. I started reading it at night and I got pretty much like 95% through it in one sitting. The writing is definitely fast-paced. It definitely keeps you engaged. The chapters are really short, so you feel like you're flying through the book, which is really nice. The book itself is not super long either, so it's a really good sized thriller. I will say that it is a little bit predictable. Like, I was able to figure out who the killer was from the very beginning, I want to say. There were a couple twists that I did not see coming, but the main twist, like who the killer was so obvious. I just wish it wasn't so obvious because I read The Perfect Marriage by her and I loved that book so much. That book took me by complete surprise. By the end of that book, I was in shock of what transpired. But with this one, I was able to figure out again who the killer was pretty early on. So the thrill of the book died pretty early on for me. I will say if you're looking for a fast-paced thriller that's not super long and it's going to be like a nice palate cleanser if you're in between books, definitely read this one. I think the concept and the plot was really interesting. The next 2 books that I read were part of a series, and it is the Kindred's Curse series by Penn Cole. I read the first book, which is called Spark of the Everflame. I'm sorry, I'm looking at my phone. I read the first book, Spark of the Everflame. I ended up giving this book a 3.5. So if you're unfamiliar with the Kindred Curse series, it basically is a YA romantasy book. I want to say fantasy because there is a little bit of romance, but I don't think it's super heavy on the romance, especially for the first, I want to say 2 books. But it's a YA fantasy. It follows a main character who has spent her life as a mortal. She's very poor, her family's very poor, she works as a healer, and that's all she really has known for her life. But she has had like episodes throughout her childhood and she feels like there's something wrong with her, and it comes to find out she actually has magical abilities. I don't want to give too much away because I think going into the series not knowing anything is the best way, but she ends up finding out that she has magical abilities and she is put in a very hard situation where she has to lead the people that she's hated her entire life and leave the people that she's called her family behind. It's a very good fantasy book. The only reason I gave the first book a 3.5 was that it was pretty slow. It reminded me a lot of A Court of Thorns and Roses, where that book was so slow compared to the other books in the series. This one was the exact same way. Like, it was so slow. The author spent a lot of time on world building. I felt like I was learning about something that happened in real life because the author definitely took her time explaining all the different characters, the magical abilities that each character had, how the society was built. And sometimes that is really boring to me. Sometimes I just want to get to the action. That's just my personal opinion. So I was a little bored, but the last, I want to say half of the book really picked up and I did not want to put it down. As soon as I finished the first book, I downloaded the second one because I was obsessed. I read this series through Kindle Unlimited, so if you have Kindle Unlimited, definitely check out the series. Then I read the second book, which is called Glow of the Everflame. I ended up giving this book 4 stars. It's so much better than the first book. It has so much more action. Still keeps the world building aspect of the first book, but there's just so much more action and adventure, and the main character definitely has a lot of character growth, and you get to see more of the main character's romance with Luther, who I absolutely love. If you know, you know. trust me, go read this freaking series. Luther is just 10 out of 10. I love him. He gives me Xaden vibes from Fourth Wing. Xaden and Luther are my like 2 favorite book boyfriends right now. And this book actually ended in a cliffhanger, so I definitely want to read the 3rd book. The 3rd book's out, but I don't want to start it yet because the 4th book comes out July 31st. So I'm waiting to start the 3rd book until the last week of July because I just have a feeling that book is going to end in a cliffhanger and I want to be able to immediately start the 4th book. Yeah, love this series. Overall, the first 2 books I give a 3.5 and a 4-star rating. Definitely check out this series if you are into fantasy and romance and are just looking for a new fantasy author. I feel like no one really talks about this series and it definitely deserves more hype. And then I read Heartless Hunter by Kristen C. Sarelli, I want to say is her last name. I read this on Kindle Unlimited as well, and I ended up giving this book a 3.75. It follows a main character who is a witch, but no one knows, aside from 2 people, know that she's a witch because in the society that she lives in, witches are actually hunted. She ends up crossing paths with a witch hunter, and in order to save a specific witch, she ends up trying to seduce him, and the male main character actually ends up trying to seduce the female main character because he has suspicions that she is a witch and she's the reason why people have been getting murdered around town. So they both secretly try to seduce one another and they end up catching feelings, but they still don't trust one another. I want to say that I was pretty bored with the story. I'm not gonna lie. I was pretty bored with the story for the first, I want to say 200 pages. Like I was enjoying it, but I wasn't loving it. I could have put it down and not gone back to it. But I want to say the last 100 pages picked up immensely and it was super fast paced. I didn't know what was going to happen with the female main character or the witch hunter, honestly. It's a very solid book and it's getting praised a lot for good reason. But definitely go into it knowing that it's pretty slow at the beginning, but then it picks up immensely. You start rooting for the female and the male main character, and I'm just curious to see how they move past their hatred for each other's kind. And this book ends in a huge cliffhanger, and I was so upset to learn that this was actually part of a series. I hadn't really heard anyone talk about it, but now that I've read it, I see it everywhere. And I didn't know it was going to be part of a series. I think it's a 3-book series or a 4-book series, I don't know, but it's a part of a series and I'm devastated because the 2nd book doesn't come out until next year and I have to wait a whole freaking year to read the 2nd book, and it ended, like I said, on a huge cliffhanger. I haven't really read a ton of books that have witches in them, so this was a nice little treat. I feel like this would be a really good book to read in the fall because the scenery is really dark and there's a couple different rainstorms in the book, so I definitely think that it's a good book to read in the fall, but honestly you can read in the summer as well because why not? And then the last 3 books that I read are actually all part of a series, and it's the Gilded series by Leah Stone. I gave the 1st and 2nd book 3-star rating, and then I gave the 3rd book a 4-star rating. So with this series, it is a YA fantasy, and let me tell you, it is very YA. The writing is super immature, very childish. You go into this book expecting a masterpiece and expecting the best writing, you're going to be severely disappointed because it is not that. I will admit that the writing again is very immature. It does get annoying in certain parts of the book, but you guys, it is addicting. I read this on Kindle Unlimited and I think I read the series in the span of a couple of days. They're really short books. If I remember correctly, I think the 1st book in the series is only like 270 pages or something like that, so the books aren't long by any means. You fly through them and what goes on in the books keep you so freaking entertained. It kind of reminds me of the Selection series. I read the Selection series, I want to say 2 years ago. The writing in those books again are very childish and I did not like the writing at all, but I was so intrigued and obsessed with the plot and what was going on. I wanted to know what was going to happen next that I read the 3 books back to back, and I was like addicted to the Selection series because I just really wanted to know what the characters were going to do next. While I was reading it, I could admit that the writing was very childish. That is the same thing with this series. So with that being said, if you want to take a chance on this series, it's about a female main character who can't be touched. Every time someone touches her, she experiences pain like no other. She has a father that loves her, she has friends, but for the most part, because they can't touch her, she has grown up feeling really lonely. And come to find out, she actually has magical abilities of her own, even though she has spent her entire life magicless. Something happens where she realizes that she does have powers and that she's actually very very powerful. She has to team up with the people that she's hated her entire life. It kind of gives me the same vibes as the Kindred Curse saga, but with the Kindred Curse saga by Penn Cole, the writing is very mature and it's actually good writing. But with this series, the writing is very immature. I've said that like a million times, but I want you guys to understand that the writing is immature. I don't want you to go into the book and then be surprised. So yeah, so she ends up realizing that she has powers, and without giving too much away, because I don't really remember exactly what happened in the first book, like all three books bleed into one another in my head now since I finished the entire series, but she ends up having to use her powers to defend people that have looked down on her entire life, and she finds out a lot of secrets about her past, about her family, and things like that. And the romance is really cute. Cute because it's young love and they go through so much. I want to say that the first book has a little bit of a love triangle, but it's not really a love triangle because you know who the main character is going to choose from the very beginning. It's pretty obvious. But if you're looking for a fast-paced, just cute romantasy that is going to be super quick to read, super easy to read, and it's just going to be fun and entertaining, that's all you want, fun and entertaining vibes, definitely check out the Gilded series. If you want a little more substance, definitely check out the Kindred Curse saga instead. Those are the 8 books that I read in June. It was definitely a quality over quantity month. I didn't rate any of the books less than 3 stars. I really enjoyed what I read this month, and I'm very excited to continue reading, and I'm very excited to read more books in July. I actually feel like I have a good TBR for July that I'm very excited to get started on. Let me know in the comments below what books you have read in June. Have you read any of the books that I read this month? What were your thoughts on them? Do you agree with my thoughts? Do you have different opinions? Either way, I would love to know it all. And yeah, that's pretty much it for today's video. I really hope you guys enjoyed watching. If you did, don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. I would love to have you on my channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.